Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal. Each week, we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices in a very casual and informal way. This is not a webinar or lecture. Rather, our goal is to talk about key topics and challenges in a very informal way and share best practices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and I'm the principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. My guest in this episode is Lorian Archer. We are talking about the importance of inclusion and equity during our design and development process for medical devices. We discuss this topic in the context of pulse oximeters. These medical devices are used to measure the blood oxygen level, and they were failing in the field during the COVID years on African American patients because of the pigmentation in their skin. When we think about a diverse population that will use our medical devices early in our design and development process, we include the design requirements to meet those requirements. This is a very important topic that often gets overlooked. Lorian and I talked about this topic in front of a live audience as part of our LinkedIn live audio series. You're about to hear a recording of our conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So with that, welcome to all of you. And Lorian, I'm so excited to welcome you today. Thank you for joining. I know you just came back from a long trip. I can't wait to hear about that. So please introduce yourself to the audience and let's get going with this.
Thank you so much, Naveen. I feel honored to be part of this talk that you have, and we're always continuing much success in in your pursuits here. Yeah, I just got back from Cornell University last week, where I was a keynote speaker. I also did some workshops with the students because I collaborated with the Cornell Biomedical Device team. They're a team of bioengineering and biomedical engineers that are part of a CUBMD project device team. Mm-hmm. And they've actually developed a pulse oximeter called Melanoxy. Mm-hmm. And it just so happened that, I've been wanting to write this white paper for a while, and I actually sponsored them. And just so happened that they were developing this, and I was like, hey, let me just use this as a case study in the paper. Mm-hmm. And then they took it a step further and said, well, why don't we be contributors or co-authors with you of the paper? And it really, what an amazing experience that has been. And I hope that everyone here will get a chance to read the full. We just released it yesterday morning.
Sure thing, yeah. And in this white paper, you are talking about this topic of equity in design controls, right? And tell us what that is and why it is important.
Yeah. So last year, when I was working at Google, I had already implemented the quality management system there, got them 13485 certified, then moved on to establish global policy. But someone had posted an article on LinkedIn about faulty pulse oximeters during COVID that misdiagnosed people's oxygen levels during COVID. And I had no idea about biased devices up until last year, and it made me feel bad because, hey, I'm an African American female, right? I've been in the device industry for over 25 years, and I have been on design teams. And why did it even never occur to me to think about or consider people of different, race, like basically considering the demographics of the people that we're going to launch the product to. And also during COVID, I lived in New York and Long Island, and I had family that lived in Queens that was the worst place where a lot of people were dying, of this horrific disease. And it made me think all they had to do when they developed the oximeter was just consider skin tone requirements and make sure the oximeter was recalibrated to read all different skin tones. And then I did more research, and I said, well, wait a minute, the FDA is really focusing more on the design validation aspect of making sure clinical trials accurately represent, the proper races of people. But I said, wait a minute. But by the time you get to design validation, the devices are already built in bias. So you're going to have anomalies, but because these are not FDA regulations to consider, health equity principles, if by the time they develop that device, they're just going to record it as an anomaly and then just move on. Right?
So 1 second, one thing, Lorian, though, why does skin tone matter for pulse oximeter? And this might sound like a very dumb question, but can you help us understand why that's a big deal and why they were failing in the field?
Yeah, so based on what the students, because I released a press release video is right on my profile. Mm-hmm. And one of the students goes into very, very much technical detail. She said oximeters use infrared light to detect, the oxygen levels of the skin. So that works good for lighter tone skins, but they need to really have different types of detection so that it will be calibrated to read through a wide range of skin tone. So it's not like hundreds of thousands of dollars that you have to spend. It's just a matter of designing this up front. Right?
Okay.
Starting with,
So you were saying that because of the different pigmentation in the skin, the absorption characteristic of, I'm a technical geek, so I love to understand the details of this, and I know many people in our audience might be wondering about that. So do I understand it right that the pigmentation might affect the absorption, and that is why the reading might be wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay.
With the forehead temperature devices, it's the same principle as well. Those, I even have friends that, whether they're African American or Indian, any brown skinned folks, they said that they had issues when they were trying to get into a place and the temperature probe misread, and they didn't have a virus or anything. Yeah, so that's why it's so important to build in these health equity principles from the beginning of the development process. So I introduced principles of design planning principles, and then we go into, okay, now you've got your design input requirements. Mm-hmm. It's just a simple thing of establishing equitable input requirements that get translated into design output specifications and requirements, and then you test these during verification and validation. So by the time you get to validation and you've got your range of your demographic, then you will not have the anomalies, right? Because you have built a very a great device that can be used on a wide range of population. And it's also not just skin tone, it could be also like hand size. Right. Women's hand sizes are smaller than men, but usually they're testing these things on these products on white male. So that's a very limited population. You're cutting people at the knees that have different needs, right?
So basically what we are talking about is understanding the characteristics of our target intended population or demographic in a lot more detail than we do today.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be on basis of race, but it could also be gender. It could also be, the local customs and the way people live, practices and behaviors. I think we need to be mindful of that. That's what you were saying by considering equity in our design process, right?
Right. Exactly.
Oh, that is really interesting to me because I think I'm an engineer. As an engineer, to me, I care about what the requirements are, what the specifications are. I do my best to design the product that works on those specifications. What I'm hearing you say is that if we don't establish the requirements up front correctly and comprehensively, we're going to miss these things.
Exactly. Gotcha. And if you have a good DD plan, a design development plan that establishes all of this, because that's really the driver that makes sure that we have a thread throughout the entire development process to implement equity principles. Mm-hmm. And I also, one of my favorite parts, because I'm a quality person, I'm a hardcore quality. I started out as a quality engineer and then worked my way up to leadership. But one of the principles we propose is that the quality policy statement, right? Every company, even if you're a startup and you don't have a fully functional quality management system, but you started your design development process, so you have to have at least, management responsibilities and design control procedures, supplier quality. You would do like a risk-based quality plan to implement your quality management system. But the first thing that you establish is, what is my quality policy? Because that sets the stage for your entire quality management system procedures and policies. So we propose that your quality policy should be updated to add a statement about promising that we're building our products equitably, right? And then that will also drive your quality management system to have principles in your design control SOPs and maybe some, post-market monitoring requirements, like, establishing KPIs for equitable KPIs to monitor how that product will be doing once it's launched.
Nice. So what I'm hearing you say is that drive it down from the management level through policy. And here my thought is this, and let me know what you think. In most companies I know, people have sort of core values around diversity and equity already established. It might be that the connectivity with those core values in the quality policy is not tight. Right? That could be the case. Or maybe this is just not thought about as much.
Yeah, I think so. That's the key, because this paper goes into very much detail just on the design development process. For each stage, how to build an equity. So we're literally giving people tools, not just nice things to say, but literally tools. And we provide an example of just part of a traceability matrix where we actually established, and this design input is based on skin tone.
Yeah.
So we walk the readers through how to create design input and establish a design output, and then what were the verification and validation protocols.
So I think that's a very good resource, guys. I've requested Lorian to provide a link to that white paper as part of the notes of this conversation. You will have access to it. So Lorian, I already see a couple of hands being raised. I'm going to start inviting people, but I have two quick questions for you just to set the stage. The first is, how do we address the concern that, hey, wouldn't it become just too cumbersome and too sort of burdensome on us to think about so many different things and test so many different things? Wouldn't it add to the cost of development? How do we address that concern?
Right. If you address this up front, the cost is actually minimal, right? It's going to be more cost if you just wait until design validation to determine, okay, now I'm going to use, the demographic population, right? Or even human factors summative study in the design validation stage. That's where you're going to lose funding if you have to address all the anomalies, right? Yep. But if you build these principles up front, it's minimal. And even in the quality regulatory plan, where I recommend that we should have either a health equity subject matter expert on the team, but we scale it, right? So for small companies, you would maybe just take your product developer and send them out and get them trained and certified, not just DEI training, but deep level equity training, right? CDC has a lot of training courses, and get them to be that internal subject matter expert. And then if you're a medium-sized company, maybe you can hire a health equity expert that is knowledgeable on design control. That's the key, because a lot of experts are doctors, but we need someone who's technical. And then the wider scale is, hey, if you already have a health equity division in your organization, then they need to be trained on design control so that they could be embedded in the development team to make good changes and updates. So it's very economical.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing you say is that if we build this as a core competence of our organization, invest in our people, drive this thought process early on, actually our overall cost to launch and cost to improve and maintain our products would be lower, not higher.
Actually, absolutely. And you would get more people that would, if it's, over the counter, you'll have more sales, right?
Nice.
So hospital, it'll work. Yeah.
So it's basically thinking about it in a bigger way and developing this as a core competence. So, senior executive leaders, and many of you are leaders in your space in our audience today, please keep that in mind, that if you treat this as a core capability of your organization, you will get better. So I'm so excited to have so many people interested in participating today. I'm going to start inviting people here to stage and open the conversation. Guys, don't hold back. It takes me a while to bring you on the stage. So please raise your hand if you're interested in participating in the conversation. I have Sarah joining me now. So Sarah, go ahead and please unmute your mic, share what you have in mind.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Naveen. And Lorianne, thank you for all your valuable insights and input. I wish really all manufacturers adopt this type of approach to design and development and quality policy. I just have a comment, or not a comment, it's not a question either. It's just I guess to add to the talk and conversation.
Uh-huh.
So I'm well aware of the issue with pulse oximeters, and I've been kind of involved in that discussion even here in Sweden. So I raised that issue towards two entities, both the Swedish competent authority and also at regulatory summit where we had BSI, having these lectures there. And I got the responses that I received was different.
Mm-hmm.
I was very surprised that the competent authority here in Sweden, that their answer was more like, well, if they fulfill the intended purpose of the device, the intended use of the device,
mm-hmm.
we don't really see an issue because it fulfills the requirements in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really amazed, because not even amazed, very shocked of the
Yes.
answer, because it puts the patients at risk.
Yes.
And the other one was more like, okay, the way we do it, this was the notified body, BSI then, the way they addressed or approached that topic was to have internal training and education about, as we're into now, equity and the differences in patients, etc., because they are aware of the issue. But then I don't understand, why do they issue these certificates for CE mark? Why do they approve the devices where they can see that there is a problem? So to do.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up, Sarah. First of all, I'm encouraged that these conversations are happening. Second, I want all of us to understand that this requires a change in mindset and thinking, and it might take some time. So, Bijan, I want to invite you now to participate. I know we're going to have a great conversation, so please go ahead and share what you have in mind.
Hi, this is a great point that Lorianne brought up regarding equity. However, what I find is that equity tends to normally address race and gender, but there are many other parameters that play into choosing the proper design inputs. Mm-hmm. For example, comorbidities, culture, environment. This is a common problem with system design, where designers miss some use conditions. And I think this is where good systems engineering can help.
Oh, that's awesome, Bijan. Thanks for sharing that. Lorianne, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Because the paper, we use the pulse oximeter that the Cornell students have built as a case study. But the paper clearly addresses all different types of differences that need to be considered. So I would encourage you to just read through the paper. Mm-hmm. It's very comprehensive.
What I would add to this, guys, I think that it requires us to be a little bit more, have broader thinking, broader perspective, broader view. And as practitioners, we might get stuck on what's written in a standard or a regulation and say, this is enough. Like Sarah, what I'm hearing you say, sometimes people might say, that's what it is. But as practitioners, I think we have to go a little bit beyond. So I hope we can have that spirit in our mind as we consider these conversations. John, please go ahead. You are next. Please share what you have in mind.
Good morning. Lorianne, you and I have very similar backgrounds, so I really connect with what you mentioned and agree with everything that's been discussed thus far. So user needs, obviously, this is part of this discussion and is often overlooked. Characterization and initial ideation stages. That's something that really needs to be embedded in the processes. I agree with the top level quality management policy and the top-down thinking, but the processes for development, they really need to emphasize this as well. And really, it's part of usability engineering.
Exactly.
62666.
Exactly.
It is a subset of this. And really, the formative usability studies would identify these kinds of things. They're done properly.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, John.
Because yeah. Can I just comment on John?
Yes.
Also what Sarah said.
Yes.
Yeah. So that the usability, definitely we cover all the principles that should be embedded in the human factors planning document, right, under the design development plan. And also, Sarah said something that's really a theme of our entire paper, right? Is that we stress there are no regulatory requirements on building equity in medical device design control. So we're trying to get this paper in front of the FDA, right? And even maybe the ISO standard bodies to try to get them to at least issue guidance on this. And then eventually we want this to become regulation. So that's our goal. I'm really going to be pushing for that. Because as Sarah said, product devices that have been cleared previously are biased. And we mentioned that. And then new devices are going to be using those previously cleared devices as predicates. So the bias will be just translated from product to product to product.
Yeah, so I think that effort is awesome, Lori, and I wish you success in that. What I would add to this is, guys, let's not wait until a regulation comes out. This is common sense. Yeah. This makes sense. This makes good sense. Let's practice. David, you are next. Go ahead. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Lorianne. I think your message is coming across in a very powerful way. I appreciate that. My question, maybe much more of a comment that I'd like to hear your thoughts on, is it seems like in general, quality takes an approach of component failure. And it seems like there's a trend, and it's very much like risk as well, that we need to take into account the human element and change our approach to account for that.
Right.
Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. I mean, for example, it's so important to even consider the language, right? Is the user can they adequately read the directions? Can they adequately engage with the device? That's one thing. Are they able to learn and adapt to a new device, right? So it's not just the technical aspects of the product, it's human beings, the interaction and interface with human beings, as someone said earlier, I think it was John talked about human use. That's critical because if we don't consider the user, then why are we even making the device? Our part, and whether we're quality or we're process engineers, we're developers, the heart and spirit why we got into this industry should be based on love and care for the user. That's why the cover page of our paper has a little heart on it. You'll see it. I chose that image because this paper was done because of love, because of care.
Yeah.
People. We want everyone to be well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that passion, Lori, and it shows in your work. I appreciate that. John, you're next. Please unmute your mic and share what you have in mind.
Just want to add one quick thing. So in regard to usability, if you're linking that to risk management, a use FMEA is where you're really going to find this other than the usability study itself. And often I've seen that not well implemented or not implemented at all. And really you're looking at design and process as the core risk management, but use is also key. And so if that's not part of your processes, for everybody on this call and anybody else who's listening to it, you need to start looking at use FMEA or just use risk management in general.
Great point.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a beautiful section on the risk management plan. And hey, if you haven't read the paper, you'll see.
We'll do it. So one thing I'll say, guys, is that, since we also talk about risk management here for everybody's perspective, I would read this under intended use and reasonably foreseeable misuse requirement of 14971. If you're doing that right, no matter what instrument you choose, whether it's use FMEA or something else like John mentioned, if you are doing intended use and reasonably foreseeable misuse right, you would capture it. And then if you are doing the characteristics related to safety right, which is the next section, you would feed that into your design input. So I think 14971 is written in a way which, if you understand the linkages, you can implement this very easily. Guys, I don't want to go into a whole lot of discussion on that because I do want to have more conversation on this topic. Roger, I'm going to try to invite you if you can make it. Yes, go ahead, Roger, you are on.
Well, I just wanted to chime in and say, I have to admit that I never thought deeply about this. I'm shocked that a device that didn't work so good on certain categories of people made it into the marketplace. And I agree with what the others said. There's no reason that a company cannot get this into their product development process, whether it's a use FMEA or a risk assessment or usability studies. I'm anxious to read the paper to see what else is in there to kind of expand my own mind, but I'll be thinking about how companies or the companies that I work for, how we can put this into the SOPs and work instructions to constantly remind people to think about this issue.
But you see, Roger, this is a benefit of our conversations, learning
Absolutely.
from each other and becoming aware. So thank you for sharing that. Shivani, you are next. Go ahead, please unmute your mic.
My question to follow up with Roger. My question to follow up with Roger was that how would it be possible for us as at the student level to integrate this into the way design processes are being done today? Because I understand that there is a user input that is required, but the way students think determines how they would think of the use case of a particular device. So
Yeah.
I think it starts off at that level.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Shivani. Actually, I'm going to have Lorianne chime into this because you worked with students, Lorianne. Can you please share some wisdom that you gained, how to get students excited and trained and become aware as they go into the industry practice?
Right. So the case study that we used was a device built by Cornell biomedical engineering students. So, I've encouraged them to go back to their design development plan and just, update their plan and make sure they have a nice traceability matrix. I even did a workshop with them on a traceability matrix principles. If you can get that down as a student, understanding how to trace design input requirements from an intended use statement and have it as a thread all the way through design outputs, verification and validation. As a student, if you can understand that principle, that is really the heart of the design control.
And you know what, Shivani, if you are able to do that, you will be a superstar and actually you will advance very well in your career. So thank you for that. We are having a great conversation here, guys, but we've got to run against the clock. So I will take two more questions. One from Ronald. You have been waiting patiently. So go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. This is an interesting point you're making, Lorianne, about the inclusion. But I agree with Roger and David that it should be seen wider. I learned when I graduated on building equipment or demolition equipment, right? And my first job was at a company, and they made medical devices. That was in 1987, and so I arrived there, and the CEO said, "Oh, this is an excellent moment you're arriving here because this week we'll start production of disposable needles and syringes." I mean, 1980s. That was that. And so he showed me the prototypes, and so there were some syringes, and some needles in different gauges. And I had no idea what I was looking at. I just had no idea. And then he said, well, this is, we have all these different cones in the needles. We gave them different colors, so it's easier to identify them. Just like, I mean, apart from what is on the package, you can also see the color. Oh, I said, was it difficult to make that work for people who are colorblind? and that
Yes.
very uneasy moment. And he said, well, we're starting production on Thursday. This was on Monday. Can you fix that for Thursday? And well, a not so long story, even shorter. If you walk into a hospital now and you look at the cones anywhere in the world, that was done that afternoon.
Got it. So, but Ronald, I think you're making a good point. Is that we operate under a lot of constraints, and it's up to us to raise the question. So the question you raised, I'm sure, took courage, but it also informed people. So guys, again, we are running against the clock. John, you have the last word in terms of the question or a comment. Please be brief.
Hey, everybody. So I guess, in the whole realm of notified bodies and regulators, the only current area where it stands for bias, where we're to look at those elements, is development with AI and biases that accompany that. So, but there's definitely a lot of area that can be looked. And then one area, looked at is the intended patient, your target population.
Yeah.
So looking at that and defining it well was in there and moving on to inputs as that plays out, as well as what about current devices that are out there that didn't have these types of input parameters? What about the inclusion of within your post-market surveillance and adding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But I think
the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's excellent input there. Yeah. So we do talk about artificial intelligence and the bias. That's also covered because, this software is a medical device that is AI ML based. So we do cover everything you said and more, John, in the paper. And the previous person that talked about color blindness, that was an excellent example. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the big heparin issue that happened back in the 90s, but with the mislabeling of the color. Someone injected the wrong amount of heparin based on how the color of the labeling was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. I'm glad that person brought out that point. So yes, AI, ML, artificial intelligence, that is addressed in the paper.
That's awesome, guys. What a wonderful conversation, guys. And I'm sure we are taking away a lot of takeaway messages. And I'll invite Lorianne in just a moment to share one or two key points we can remember. But what I want to share with you now are a couple of just simple housekeeping announcements. First, this happens every Friday at 11. So those of you who are new, 11 a.m. Eastern in the United States, come join us. Anytime. You don't need a formal invitation, although I will announce it on my LinkedIn feed. But we talk about all these different topics. Tell your friends. Bring them over. We want to talk to as many people and connect with as many people as possible. Second point is that the recording of our conversations will be available, and the past conversations are available on the Let's Talk Risk. Now I'm going to start calling it a knowledge letter, not a newsletter anymore. Let's Talk Risk knowledge letter. Please sign up. There's a link there in the event as the first comment there. So please sign up to be a part of this community, and we're going to share knowledge with each one of us. And finally, and most importantly, as we have seen from people who have shared their comments and insights in a discussion, all of you have wonderful insights and comments. I would like you to join me as a guest speaker. It doesn't take any preparation. No preparation required, very casual conversation. Just raise your hand and let me know you might be interested in joining me. We do this every week. The calendar is very flexible. With that, Lorianne, I want to invite you to share some one or two key bullet points that we can take away to remember.
Yeah, I would have to say I had a planned script before, but what I'm feeling now is I really want people who are in the medical device industry, no matter what position you have, if you And entry level, if you're a student getting ready to go into industry, if you've been a leader for decades, open up your hearts and minds and understand that you are doing the most amazing thing to me. I know I'm biased now on the planet. You're in an organization that is building a product to help save people's lives or make people's lives better. So with that, institute these principles and make sure that the product that you're building will be equitable for as many people as you can, bring under the umbrella of your design. So I really speak that from the heart, because when I realized that there was bias, it affected me personally, and this is why what has driven me to write this paper. And so, secondly, I want to say I do have a newsletter as well on Substack. It's Cafe QAFE. That's all it is. If you look me up, QAFE.substack.com. I will be writing a series of articles, and also will be posting them on LinkedIn, breaking down each section of the white paper. So I'll be writing for quite a while. So I invite you. It's a free subscription, and just join me.
Thank you, Lorianne, and what an inspiring message to leave us with. Guys, with that, thank you so much for joining today. I love the energy on this topic. I love your active participation and your willingness to share. Most importantly, your willingness to share. Please make new connections. You can reach out to anybody in this audience through direct messaging on LinkedIn. Don't spam them, but they don't have to be your first degree contact, but make new connections. Let's continue this conversation. Everybody, have a good weekend ahead, and thanks once again. We will connect once again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.